Hello, everyone. This is JVL here with my best friends, Sarah Longwell and Timothy Miller of the Bulwark. Welcome to the next level. Hit all of the buttons. Subscribe, like us, do the following, leave the
Love
5
us,
stars,
really.
whatever platform you're consuming the show on.
We need the validation. We need the
Love
reinforcement.
me.
We enjoy it.
Love me.
Some of us need it more than others. And and also go to thebulwark.com. Go over where we give away all the good stuff. You can sign up for Charlie Sykes' outstanding newsletter, Morning Shots. You can listen to some of our other great podcasts. You can even get a newsletter from me, which you don't have to read. Many of the people on this show don't read it.
I always read your newsletter.
It's really like, it's not recommended reading so much as suggested reading. Or alternate reading. Okay. Sarah, you were on the news this week like a real professional writer and not a professional other person who happens to write in her spare time.
I sent him a Nikki Haley piece last week, Tim. I would just like you to know that.
As we say in the business.
Yeah,
Nice.
that's right.
And
I got asked about it on television. I'm getting interviewed about your material.
What did you say? It's sort of like when people asked me to sign.
Did you say,
your
"Oh, I'm
book
sorry,
at the
I didn't
last
read
event.
that"?
What's that? No, I did not say sorry. I didn't read that. I didn't. It was more just asked me to comment on Nikki Haley than really to like grade you and your.
Oh, they didn't
article.
ask you how great was Sarah Longwell's piece?
They didn't say that. They just read a little bit blurb from it and asked me to kind of react.
All right.
Okay.
Tim,
Did you
how
agree
great
or
was Sarah's
disagree?
piece?
I concurred. It's. I think that it was very insightful and prescient. And now JVL wrote a newsletter about your piece, and now I'm trying to remember. I don't want to do something really embarrassing and compliment a line from JVL's piece about your piece rather than complimenting your piece.
Oh, worst. But go ahead, say which line. Just say the line.
I just think that about there not being the Magdalene, the 80%.
Oh, that's him. That's JVL.
Yeah, right. I knew it was as soon as it came out to me. But it was essentially, riffing on the central point that you had, which is that there just isn't anywhere to go for Nikki in this primary, and I think that is what there's just a class of people. And in the commentariat, and particularly in the Republican commentariat, as well as people who are just super interested in politics, who are Republican, that like just can't get in their head what has changed, and why like it couldn't be Nikki. And that's frustrating. And I liked that your piece and JVL's riff on your piece, both I think explained quite clearly like the fact that it's not about a normative judgment on Nikki as a governor. It's not really it's not about her performance, her skills as a politician. Like it's just about the fact that like the makeup of the party is now a MAGA party, and the winner of this primary is going to have to cross some threshold level of MAGA with which she doesn't cross, right? And that doesn't mean that these people hate her. It doesn't mean that that they can't be in coalition with one another, but it's just she is not going to be the standard bearer for this party. It's the same way. There are a lot of examples of this, right? It was like up until like recently, some socialist wasn't going to win a Democratic primary, right? It's why nobody, because like Bernie was in coalition with the Democratic Party, but like people had a general positive feelings about Bernie, but like that's not what the party was. Now maybe over time that'll change, but I think that's the parallel here, right? Or there are other examples of that. And Nikki, I think it's a bet of her own making, really, though I'm not sure that she could have done any different as an Indian American, like neoconservative globalist. But her, kind of unwillingness to go whole hog with MAGA prevents her from really having an opportunity here. And so I think then, the question is, does she know that? And is she playing for VP? Does she live in this Karl Rove world of unreality where all these voters are just going to snap back to normal and really want low taxes and free and American strength abroad, or is she, just being figuring that like her best path towards a VP nomination is to run, and that you never know, who knows, maybe Ron DeSantis, falls off a bridge and Donald Trump has a heart attack and I'm the only one left standing, or does she really think that these people might come back to her? And I'm not really sure the answer to that part.
And Sarah, I want to prompt you here to disarm a criticism which I've already seen of us, which is that you are not rooting for Nikki Haley to fail. You are simply analyzing the reality, right? It would be good for America.
Who leveled this criticism?
I see it out there.
Wait, what is the criticism though? That we want
you're
her to
rooting
fail?
for Nikki.
Yeah,
to fail.
we're saying
that's not
she's
true.
toast because we want, right? I believe all three of us agree that in a world where Nikki Haley could win the Republican presidential nomination, we would love to live in that world. That would be a good world. That's a good timeline.
Yes.
Correct?
Agreed.
Yeah. Okay.
Agreed. I want to say a few things about Nikki Haley that weren't in the piece that are sort of new observations as I've thought more. And so can I just take the first thing as the scenario Tim played out. Is she playing for third? Is she playing for VP? Because I think this is a very interesting question. And let me tell you, I think if you really think hard about Nikki Haley and how this could go, right? One of the things I talked about in the piece is how she's the top of the tier of the meh middle, right? The lame reruns of people, the Pences, the Pompeos,
Cruz,
Chris Christie, whatever. She's at the top of that tier. And so I could actually see her running where DeSantis and Trump are kind of going head to head. I'm not saying this is definitely the scenario, but I could see this scenario playing out. Where Trump actually, he's attacking DeSantis relentlessly, but he's helping Nikki, right? He's being kind of nice to Nikki. You know why? Because she's taking vote share from DeSantis. And so, she's eating into him. She's getting, as Tim calls it, a gentle, womanly 10, 12% maybe, especially in New Hampshire, right? So we've got the Iowa caucuses, and let's say DeSantis and Trump are both in the low 30s, high 20s. She's coming in third with double digits, low double digits somewhere.
John Edwards territory.
Here's her play, right? The next state up is South Carolina, her home state, where she was a 2-term governor. Now, I don't think she wins her state in this scenario, but why doesn't Trump or DeSantis, they need her 10%, and they're going into her home turf, and there's 2 weeks. There's 2 long weeks between New Hampshire and South Carolina. Why isn't at that point somebody cutting a deal with Nikki Haley for VP? And I was floating this scenario in the Bulwark Slack, and I think it was Amanda was saying, like, I don't know what does Nikki Haley get you? But I guess it hasn't been going on long enough for me to say that it's a trend, but it used to be when the populists were the recessive gene of the party, as Charlie puts it, that you gave them the recessive job. You gave the VP to Sarah Palin, and the normie, serious person, John McCain, was on the top. Well, that could be reversed now, where your establishment candidate, your Mike Pence, that's a VP slot, because you're the junior player on this team now, right? We're in control, MAGA's in control. And so why isn't she that establishment VP?
I can answer that. So,
okay.
I think that she's thinking like this. I don't know this. I know this is not reporting, but I sense that she's thinking like Sarah is thinking right now, with maybe a little bit of additional dollop of wish casting that maybe, things can turn up Nikki for the top of the ticket. But I think that this is a key part of the strategy. Here's why I'm not sure that works. Number one is I think that she only helps Trump, and I don't think Trump will pick her. Right. If you're in that 2 weeks with DeSantis, that is a risky move, actually, to add Nikki to the ticket right before South Carolina. That could end up signaling to the MAGA voters that he's a Yale rhino phony cuck, and actually help Trump. I know that like this is where people's brains are broken. Like the notion that a Nikki endorsement might hurt somebody in South Carolina, it might. I mean, Nikki did endorse Marco last time, and it didn't help him that much. It didn't deliver very much. Yeah. Right. So, and DeSantis is going to be in this very fragile position, right, where he wants to be more electable, but he can't be seen as a phony, inauthentic MAGA. So I don't know that she helps him. So would she definitely help Trump? right? Because Trump is MAGA, and so he doesn't have to worry about that authenticity question, and what he needs is help with the electability question. But is Trump really going to pick her after he went through with Pence? Find that hard to believe. Would she want to be Trump's VP? Who the fuck knows? I guess so. That's insane to me, but I guess she would. So that I think is and then the other element to this, just as you game this out, is let's just look at the recent past. Kamala almost lost VP over her one mean thing to Biden. Had Kamala stayed around longer, she probably wouldn't have gotten VP, right? Had she done a couple more debates where she was going toe to toe with Biden, she probably wouldn't have gotten VP. Pence was from off the table, right? You mentioned Palin. Palin was not like, McCain did not pick Mitt Romney or Tim Pawlenty. Obama did pick Biden, but Biden didn't even really count. He's at the 1%. Like that. He didn't pick. He didn't pick Hillary, right? There's very few examples looking back of the winner choosing the person that was a real thorn in their side. Carrie Edwards,
Reagan,
I guess,
and Bush.
And Bush, Carrie Edwards, Reagan, Bush. Maybe I'm forgetting one, but those are the two that come straight to mind. It's not impossible, but it's a lot harder of you got to walk this tightrope, right? Where you're competitive enough to seem viable and seem like you're additive, but you're not so competitive that the feelings are hurt and they can't pay, you know what I mean? So I just think that for those two reasons, the fact that she might hurt DeSantis in some ways and that it's a tough thing, I think that she's thinking that. I agree with that, but I do think that's a pretty challenge. I wouldn't put any money on it, I guess what I'm saying.
Yeah, I mean, also from Trump's perspective, having seen what happens when you have a normie vice president and you need him to do a coup for you and he refuses to do it, I cannot believe that Trump would pick another normie, right? I have to believe that if Trump were to be the nominee, he will get somebody who he views as a pure loyalist, a button man, like a Carrie Lake or an MTG or somebody like that. Maybe this is incorrect.
No. Well, I think that makes sense in a global way. I think the question is sometimes you can make weird decisions. If you're locked in a dead heat, Trump versus DeSantis, you're going into Nikki Haley's state and you're thinking, what gives me the advantage to pop out into, because the thing about this is why I'm going to keep harping on the calendar. The calendar is going to cause weird dynamics where you're popping out at South Carolina and Nevada are on the same day. They're on the same day. And if you recall, Trump was living in the 30s in these states and then popped in Nevada and then rolled with that momentum into the March 5th Super Tuesday. This is assuming the calendar stays the same, where you can lock up so many delegates on that day. So that momentum popping out of the South Carolina, Nevada is so important. I guess that's where I see they could do some weird things. I understand your points are all correct. I think I just could see in that 2 weeks, suddenly people being I don't know, man, we got to lock this up. We got to put distance. We got to do something but Tim's point about whether or not she's a liability, I think that's possible. In some ways, I think we maybe shouldn't over-interpret, though, the MAGA-ness of a lot of this audience. There's a really deep MAGA strain. It's a dominant one, but there's plenty of establishment MAGA,
soft
normie MAGA, soft MAGA, maybe MAGA. That I think can shift things.
I think that this pitch is a real one for Tim Scott. By the way, Tim Scott does. So South Carolina is 2 weeks different. He brings diversity to the ticket. He is not really MAGA, but hasn't done anything to poke MAGA in the eye the way Nikki has. And that does fit the bill more of a Obama Biden. Gore Lieberman is another one we picked, but Lieberman was kind of a second tier candidate, right? Of choosing a second, someone that wasn't a real contender. I think Kamala really fits this bill, right? She dropped out before any votes, right? Yeah. So a Tim Scott, I think, and that's the same 2 weeks South Carolina. Now, does Tim Scott actually bring you anything in South Carolina? A couple good news cycles. I don't know. But your point about how people's brains start to get wired and they're like, man, things are really close. I got 2 weeks. Even if he brings me 2% in a couple news cycles, it's worth it. So I think that your gamesmanship there, Sarah, makes a lot of sense for Scott.
Can I just ask you guys to imagine what the world will look like in the level of establishment Republican freak out if we hit that moment 2 weeks out from South Carolina and the race is actually pretty close, Trump DeSantis? Like the level of unbelievable hair on fire panic in Conservatism Inc. and among the anti-antis
And from me. And for me, I will also be panicking in that scenario. That's a terrible scenario because it puts me in a position where I will suddenly be like, I'm sorry, everybody. You have to line up with DeSantis. Like, because we've never done this, but it's just speaking of like freestyle scenarios. Just go walk down the path with me of a Trump second term. Like, the idea of a Trump second term.
Schedule F.
This is where when people do who's more dangerous, Trump or DeSantis, they're just like thinking about them as like these two guys that both have these issues. I'm talking about Donald Trump, who did a coup, getting a second term, and like what happens to the press in that scenario? Like Donald Trump is in excuse my language, just bleep this if there's kids in the car, but he is in fuck all territory, and he is like. I would like Don Jr. is going to make a tremendous Secretary of State. And you media are canceled. You're not the enemy of the people. You're just gone. Like and you might be like, well, how does he do that? Like just a Trump second term is like, to me, the scariest thing I could possibly imagine.
Concur. I don't need to go further down that path right now. I'm going to spend more time thinking about it later. But yes.
Boy, are you guys going to enjoy the newsletter that's sitting in your inboxes right now?
I only saw the
here
headline.
Recording this show.
Wait, can I just one thing I wanted to do before I didn't want to forget this. So we did a focus group just before.
Is Megan going to get mad at you for saying this?
No, because it turns out we're not going to really use this for a show.
Okay.
And so I have a little fresh focus group content. We really dug in on Haley because we knew she was going to. And these are just 2-time Trump voters, just no other screen. They voted for Trump in 2016, they voted for him in 2020. Here's what some of them said about Nikki Haley. She's just going to be a return to what everything was before 2016. Status quo politician, basically.
Isn't that good? Wait, I'm sorry. Is that an endorsement or criticism?
Sorry, no, that's a criticism
okay.
from
just
that person. Endorsement,
they really like her.
If that was Sarah instead of Brett, that's an endorsement. But it's Brett, and Brett thinks that's a bad thing.
Check out the big brain on Brett.
And then David said, I think she'd just be, Republicans that we've seen in the past. I think she'd just be more of the same cookie cutter conservative views. So here's the thing.
She'd go back to talking about freedom and free markets and economic expansion and American strength in the world. And we don't want that. I'm sorry, Sarah, did either of these gentlemen speak with a foghorn leghorn accent?
No, they didn't.
Was there any pro Nikki? In the two, you didn't read any quotes. Not really.
And here's the thing. But to Tim's point, and this was in the poll that we did, they don't dislike Nikki Haley. They are not. They are not saying those things with derision. They're just saying them as a like why they're not that into them.
That's not my person.
That's not my person. And what's crazy about Nikki Haley, like the great irony of Nikki Haley, is that she's got all these components that would make her be a future candidate. She's a woman. She's a minority. She's got this foreign policy experience. Like this should be the fresh new thing. But actually to them, she's a throwback, right? She's an old style politician. She's not something new. And this is where I just want to stomp on something that Tim said. These Republicans, Sununu and Hogan and Haley, God love them. They have the same problem that I did, which is they spend all their time at AEI, at the Heritage Foundation, around donors and around the elite conservative class, the Wall Street Journal editorial page writers, and they think the Republican Party is something different than it is. They think voters want something different than they do, and they tell themselves a fantasy tale about how you can get back to that. But I'll tell you what. The mountain ain't coming to Muhammad on this one. Like, you are either going MAGA or they're not interested in you.
And the other thing is the group is even bigger than that. Sometimes we like to tease, our AEI pals and all this and make it about that. But I was just looking at some numbers yesterday, and I kind of didn't realize this. In the midterms, college-educated whites only went for the Dems by like 3 or 4 points. Nationally, right? So like there is like in all of the major metros all across America, college educated white people who live in the suburbs who are 40 plus that voted for Republicans. And
they
those
voted for
people
Trump.
Yeah, they voted for Trump in the midterms. They voted for the midterms. Voted for Herschel Walker or whatever.
Right.
And if they had their druthers, they would have rather had Brian Kemp than Herschel Walker. They would rather have Nikki Haley, right? So it feels like it's a lot of people. Right. You know what I mean? It feels like it's more people than it is. Right. Because it is, 15% of 100 million is 15 million people, and they all live in the same major metros, and they're all, you know what I mean? Like, so I do think that leads a little bit to this disillusion. One other, if you don't mind, I'd like to do one little bit of figure skating judging on the Nikki intro, on the Nikki announcement. That video that she dropped, boy. And I was texting with one of my buddies that still does Republican videos to make sure I wasn't TDSing on this. A fan? It didn't have a story or a message. It spoke to her fundamental problem, right? She wanted to do this video that, to Sarah's point, should have been she's running in 2015. She'd been a great candidate for 2015. I think maybe 2011, but we can nitpick that. But that video in 2011 would have been, hey, I was from Bamberg. I saw racism firsthand, but I also saw the goodness of America. We overcame it. When I was governor, I brought down the Confederate flag. USA, we can all come together. A little bit of Obama, maybe. There are no blue states or red states. We're not divided by white and black. Right? Okay. You could do that video and tell a good story that's her story, that is authentic to her story up until 2017, right? And that is a video that would speak to a certain group of people. It's not a winning video in the Republican primary for all the reasons we've discussed, right? Or you can do I'm a MAGA culture warrior, the woke left is out to get us, blah, 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 what DeSantis will do. She tried to do both in the same video. Like it made no sense. Like literally the first sentence of the video is, my town, Bamberg, was divided by a railroad, and the railroad divided the town by race. And then 7 seconds into the video, it's like, and then there are some people that want to say America is fundamentally flawed with structural racism, and shows a picture of someone holding a sign that says racism is a pandemic. And I'm like, wait a minute. The video started by you talking about literal structural racism. Like the structure of your town was divided by race. And then 5 seconds later attack the 1619 project, right? And then later in the video, the same thing happens, where she makes fun of the woke left, but then tries to get. She doesn't mention that taking down the Confederate flag, but she does mention the AME church, right, and how she went to the AME church. But it's again, you're talking about how the left is talking about how racism is a real problem, and then here I am, going to this black church that got shot up by a white supremacist, right? It doesn't make any sense. The video had no narrative structure, and the choices that they made, choosing that race, choosing the signs, it's speaking to this tiny, tiny, tiny group of people for whom, I'm mad at the 1619 project, but I don't want to be too racist, right? That's that's 4% of the Republican electorate that is there, and so just stylistically and narrative, she just doesn't have one.
And that's because Nikki Haley doesn't know who she is. And what's a bummer is that I bet she did used to she knew who she was in the Republican Party, where you could look to the future. I sort of felt like this. Where you're well, I think limited government and free markets and American leadership in the world are really important. Those are values that are important to me. But I have this future in mind for the Republican Party, where it's much more socially tolerant, and it doesn't feel. I can be a voice in that new movement. It's going to be younger, fresher, whatever.
Can I? And
then
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, then the party zagged, right? And so now she's got to make a pitch where she's talking about socialism and being dark. She wants to make an optimistic pitch for the country, but she doesn't know how to do it without hitting the buzzwords that drive the anger and the wedge issues. And as a result, she comes off as inauthentic, and she doesn't know how to do it quite well. And that's why you get a messy narrative, because her own sense of things is messy. She doesn't really know what direction she wants to go.
So I would suggest to you that it's not really a Nikki Haley problem. It's a Republican Party problem. I think she knows who she is. The problem is that who she is, it used to be a cutting edge reform Republican, and now she's a conservative Democrat. I mean, she's just much closer to Joe Biden than she is to Donald Trump in her view of America and her view for the future.
Foreign policy at least.
Certainly on foreign policy, right? And
probably on race.
Probably on race, probably on like infrastructure and economics, and in terms of like trade, right? She's probably much closer where Biden is on trade. And so
I think she's not where Biden or Trump. Both Biden and Trump are protectionists on trade, and Nikki Haley's a globalist.
Right.
So the point is,
Nikki
again,
Haley's a globalist. That's the fundamental issue.
Yeah.
She is a globalist.
If you could like shake the Etch-a-Sketch and let her start from scratch in terms of her party ID right now, I think she'd be more in step as running as a Southern Democrat. Right? You know, why not be a conservative?
I don't know
Democrat
about that.
in South Carolina, I think
she was a Tea Party Republican. I don't think it's quite that. I think that the reality is that she's an out of step Republican. That's what she is. She is an out of step Republican.
Yeah, and Nikki Haley wants to live in a world where like she can talk about the debt all day long and people are responsive to that. And like we should be spending less and we should be supporting the Ukrainians against the Russian advancement. She's giving big speeches about that are Reagan-esque in there. You know, we're going to fight communism and whatever. And that's who she wants to be. And she just can't be that person and get elected or be viable or even taken seriously in a Republican primary. And so she just sounds like a weird, then I'm just going to add one thing to this. Like, there's also this weird MAGA pop feminism thing where like, she knows she's got to say she's tough and she's a fighter. So it's
heels.
Like, it hurts when I see, I kick back and it hurts worse when they're in heels. And I'm like, ugh. Like what is that?
Does
and
it?
It would if you were, I mean, if you kicked hard. Heels, I know you don't deal that much with women, but like the bottom of a stiletto heel, you can take your
drag queens. I guess I'm just saying, I'm trying to imagine myself getting kicked by Nikki Haley, Donald Trump, and Ron DeSantis. I don't think any of them are going to hurt that much, actually. I don't think any of them pack much of a punch with their kick.
So you talk about like the dissonance of her pitch, Tim.
Yeah.
When she specifically frames that as like, you know, she likes to kick bullies. Right. And whatever you think of Donald Trump, like whether you're pro or con, like he is a bully, and if you are a Trumper, that's why you like him, because he goes and bullies the people you hate for you, right? He's in the weirdness of her having been in his administration and tried, I guess, at the very end to stand up to him, but then reversing course. Again, like it just seems like a formulation in her video that was practically designed to highlight her weakness instead of her strength, right? Because you want to talk about fighting generically, fine, but why insist that she's good at fighting bullies when she didn't?
Breaking news: Nikki Haley is now calling for mandatory mental competency tests for politicians over 75. You know, this is what we're going to get.
75. That's an interesting bright line.
That's an interesting age. Wonder
is that for real or is that an onion?
No, it's for real.
And you know what? So Trump would be, so he's, let's see. So
Man,
Biden would be 82.
woman,
He'd be
TV
78.
Binder, right?
Yeah.
What was his formulation on that? Do you remember?
It was man, woman, camera, TV. That's not it. I lost
anyway, that's great. That's really great. Okay. Do we want to talk a little bit about Elon and Twitter this week? Have you guys been enjoying getting all of Elon Musk's tweets in your feed?
No, I don't see him that much. And I also don't do the one the For You thing.
So you weren't getting them on Monday when because this is so Casey Newton's platformer broke an amazing story, which is that on the night of the Super Bowl, Elon Musk got incredibly upset because Joe Biden's tweet about the Philadelphia Eagles got more engagement than his tweet about the Philadelphia Eagles. And so he threw Twitter into crisis mode and like started rousting engineers out of bed at 2:30 in the morning, because for like 48 hours, the most important thing was, why isn't Elon Musk's tweets getting more engagement? And at first, they tried explaining to him why this might be, and he did not like any of those explanations. He simply said they should get more engagement. And so they went and just created a formula for him to give him a boost times 1,000. Would have had a practical effect of meaning that the algorithm would show basically everybody on Twitter Elon's tweets.
I mean,
thoughts?
You spent 44 billy. Well, a lot of it is other people's money, but and he put in a few billy of his own. And I think it's a true poster. That's so committed to posting. This is the one thing that me and Elon can relate to. I'm a poster. I want to post. I want people to see my takes. I'm unrepentant about it. And as a poster, I can understand that you would want to spend a significant portion of your net worth ensuring that everyone sees your posts. I don't know how good of a business practice it is. He's supposed to be a genius businessman. It doesn't seem to me that he's maximizing the performance of the website for the user, for the advertiser. That would seem to be your main goal as an owner, that you would want people to want to come to the site. I don't think that a lot of people want to see his posts. Some of his posts are bad. He did one of the memes that he forced people he was, I guess, meta commenting on himself, and he posted this gross. It was gross for me. I guess.
I did see this.
Picture of like a young.
Right? I mean, am I wrong that was a vaguely porny kind of meme?
Extremely porny. I'm getting to the age now where it's
also like young
hard for me to tell.
Too.
Yeah,
like pedophilia porny, as
it's
our
hard for me to
friends
tell.
Would say.
Yeah, were they 15 or 24? It's like kind of hard for me to tell now. Like now that I'm a dad, but young women, like one feeding the other one milk.
Forcing her to drink
forcible
milk. Because she's
milk.
got her hair. She's like pulling her hair.
Holding
it's
her
gross.
ponytail. It's porny and young. Ephebophilia is right. And so, these are the people that are deeply concerned, I guess, about the sexualization of children. I'm pretty sure that Twitter is not an 18-plus website.
That is one of their concerns. And also about the algorithm never putting its thumb on anything.
Right.
Because the worst thing in the world was when the bad Twitter would de-emphasize some tweets and emphasize others.
Oh, right. Shadow banning or shadow pushing. So anyway, the big shadow banning crisis. Is this a First Amendment crisis? Let's call in the Supreme Court. The Marshal of the Supreme Court might need to go meet with Elon. So it's really pathetic and sad. And, for me as a Twitter fanatic, the quality of the site is deteriorating substantially. But I'm also I do have like a masochistic enjoyment of like the Casey Newton platformer stories of the sad. You know what I watched last night with Toulouse was Puss in Boots. Have you seen Puss in Boots?
It's so good. The new one, right? The Last Wish.
Yeah, Jack Horner becomes Little Jack Horner, who puts his thumb and pulls out a plum, gets upset that he doesn't have any like cool magic like all of the other fairy tales, and so he becomes Big Jack Horner, who is like just a grown and adult baby who's like really mad and wants everything to go his way. Big Jack Horner, and there is like a little bit of a Big Jack Horner element to Elon's, kind of like a child that wants all of the toys to work for him.
Sarah, do you have any thoughts? Would you like to throw down a Shaquille O'Neal style dunk on this?
Well, I just think in terms of it, we are an interesting group because JVL basically has hated Twitter for as long as I've known him, doesn't really participate. I was new to Twitter in 2018 and became somebody who really liked Twitter. I really like Twitter. But I'm not a huge poster. I would post a fair amount, I guess, but no, I can't come anywhere close to Tim levels of posting.
I've actually done 2 posts since you've been talking right now.
Right. The extent to which Tim Miller thinks people need to hear every thought rolling around in his head is just unbelievable to me. And I would like people to know when I feel strongly about something, I'm going to tweet it. But I can't come up with that level of takes and that volume. But the experience of Twitter is awful now. I think somebody that I even kind of like the Dreyfus guy, the kid Dreyfus.
Ben Dreyfus.
Ben Dreyfus said something at one point it's time for everybody to admit that Twitter's not different. Nothing's really changed. Everything is fine, and stop freaking out about Twitter. And I guess there might have been a period earlier on where that was kind of true, but it's garbage now. Just from a usability experience, having 2 different feeds is terrible. The algorithms, the people they feed me are awful. I don't see the people I like to see. And so it's a bad experience. And there is something about Elon and it just in general, this sort of that category of person where they want everybody else, right? They're like, I drink liberal tears and you guys are snowflakes and you're babies and you're so sensitive. And then you watch them like live like Elon's profligacy on Twitter what it has done is demystified Elon to the point where like the genius pot smoking, but I'm going to take you to space guy is now like shit post memer who oftentimes, because that's not the first porny one I've seen from him, and I don't even see that much. But he did that one where it was trying to get Trump back on Twitter, and it was like a girl, like bending over a bed, and like Jesus was supposed to be Trump,
getting railed by a priest or something, right? Is that something like that?
But it was gross. It was gross, and he's a gross, infantile person, and I can't get to like I won't read Platform. I like don't care enough to go read about Elon. But when you communicate the Schadenfreude to me, I enjoy it. I just wish the consequence wasn't that this platform is actually quite good for sharing news and engaging about news, even as sewage and garbagey as it was. It's still pretty good, and I miss it. I actively miss decent Twitter.
Elon's browser history must be a house of horrors. I mean, 100% chance there's a lot of tentacle stuff in there.
Oh yeah, 8chan.
I don't know what that
scat, means. The whole thing.
Sarah, don't look it up.
Just don't even
look it up.
Elon's Google history is terrible. I will say this: the one nice thing that it's done for us is the Bulwark Substack comment community is so vibrant now. Here's an inline plug for joining Bulwark Plus. Totally true. Several people commented in a recent one about how I've substituted this for Twitter, and our little Bulwark Reddit is doing better. So we're trying to find I think alternate places to fill the discussion a part of Twitter, which is nice, but like the incoming immediacy news live react element is hard to replace.
Yeah. All right. Balloon talk.
This.
We have a crisis in America that has been brought on by Joe Biden's weakness. That the Chinese are just sending balloons all over the country, and these balloons are destroying the lives of good, hard-working Americans in blue-collar states, and it's awful. Sarah, what are the people saying in your focus group? Has this ever come up?
Has anybody mentioned? We asked a recent swing. It was the group. We did a group last week. It's a great episode we did out of it with Peter Baker on the Focus Group podcast. Go check it out. But we asked them. They were Trump to Biden voters, so Trump 16, Biden 2020 voters, and we were just asking them a bunch of different stuff. They'd all watched the State of the Union, and then we just like quickly at the end we're like, so the balloon. What do you think? And I would say there were two camps of balloon people. There were people who were mad about the balloon, that they said it made us look weak, that we hadn't shot it down, that Biden hadn't done anything about it. They were super concerned. And then there was the other half that was like, I don't know if we know enough about the balloon to like have an opinion. And those are the people you should listen to. The ones who know that we don't yet know enough to have an opinion. But half the group was like, can't believe they didn't shoot it down right away.
Did anybody say aliens?
Nobody said aliens.
Okay.
My balloon thing. So I have one area of thing that I'm wondering what's happening, and I wish. So I guess a mild critique of the Biden administration is I do feel like we could have a little more communication about these secondary and tertiary things that we've shot down. I don't know, like we're firing $400,000 missiles at like something in the sky over Lake Huron, and then it just seems like the type of thing that like the president should be like, hey, we shot down this thing, it was another spy balloon, or it was somebody's drone that was illegally flying above Lake Huron, and we had no I would like a little communication. That said, on the original balloon, I have to laugh about like all the hard boy talk from Marco and all these guys and Tom Cotton and all these
JD
guys.
Vance posing with his gun.
Yeah, he's
like, oh, I could take out that balloon from here.
Oh, Biden, we should have shot that fucker down. And we've all relitigated all the how this happened during Trump and nobody ever did it. But the most hilarious part of this to me was the other day. Even the serious ones. Even Mike McCall, I guess, is like Kevin's is apparently going to be one of Kevin's Team Normal spokespeople because he's been out on the shows a lot lately. He was the one that said that Marjorie Taylor Greene had been maturing. He's a congressman from Texas. He runs one of the foreign
His judgment
committees.
sounds good.
Yeah, he sounds great. So Mike is out there today. Was out there on CBS Face the Nation this weekend. I was watching this, going, "This is a sophisticated spy balloon that went across 3 nuclear sites, and the way that we tracked it showed how what the Chinese' strategy was in order to spy on us and get all of our information. And the Biden administration let this happen. Their weakness." New reporting from the Washington Post yesterday showed that actually the first balloon was designed to spy on U.S. assets in Guam, maybe Hawaii, but weather currents sent it way north to Alaska, and then it just started floating over the country. So, I mean, obviously their sources are in the military, TBD on what is true, but there is an Occam's razor element to that, which I appreciate, which is like all of these Republicans are trying to do the Red Scare thing, and like, oh, this thing is so sophisticated and dementia Biden wasn't ready to respond to it, like when in like the reality was that the Chinese, just like their vaccine, like sent over a balloon that like didn't work and was supposed to go to Guam and ended up flying over Montana. Like we broke up all the signals and then shot it down and got all the information. So I do appreciate that, like the balloon, the original balloon saga has kind of revealed this tendency of, how maybe back in the old days, there'd be a little bit of a wait and see approach. Like, let's get briefed. Let's comment. That is not the place where Republicans are right now. Anything that happens, Biden bad, Biden a pussy, Biden weak. And like, we have to come out and speak out. And, as more details have emerged, they've really been left to look pretty stupid.
I am sort of interested in the fact that we have a rough consensus foreign policy wise on China, right? The two parties are
really
basically trying to outbid each other on China hawkishness, which is great. I'm a China hawk. I think it's fabulous. But I don't know how that really jibes with the MAGA America First stuff, because their anti-China stuff, like if the rubber ever meets the road on Taiwan, the America First stuff ain't gonna fit, right? I mean, like the neocons in the party who have been, dragging the Republicans onto the side of the anti-China, they're gonna want to do stuff to defend Taiwan that I think the MAGAites are absolutely not going to want to. So I guess what I'm trying to say is I think this is a place in which it's a freebie for Republicans right now, but it might not always be. And I'm not convinced that the Republican Party will remain as China hawks if it means shipping weapon systems or breaking up a blockade or something.
I 100% agree with this. And you know what? If China invades Taiwan, you know who's going to be for doing something? Abigail Spanberger,
Nancy
Alyssa
Pelosi,
Slotkin, Nancy Pelosi. Like, It is not, and this is where, the voters often talk about the uniparty in the focus groups, which is a thing I had not heard. I maybe now I've said it on here a few times, but it comes up a lot. It's something that's in the right-wing media ecosystem. And what they mean is that Mitch McConnell and Lindsey Graham and Nancy Pelosi and, whatever, the foreign policy apparatus on both sides of sort of elite parties is that they agree on a bunch of this stuff. And that's the stuff that the MAGA right wing, they think that's bad. That is the establishment. They're on the same side. They will sell America out to go help somebody else that doesn't matter to us. And if you try to explain to them freedom and democracy around the world and how that actually does communicate, work for American safety, that's lost. That is not a thing anymore.
And that's why all those people held hands with like Glenn Greenwald and the Bernie Bros, right? The uniparty is a critique both of the far left and the far right. They just come at it from different reasons, right? The far left comes at it from the Cy Hirsch, America is evil. And the far right comes at it from nativism. And yet they hold hands together.
And this is where Elon is, right? So just play this out, right? Like, so here we are in Ukraine and Russia, right? And Elon is now doing this fucking thing with Starlink, right? Where he's only providing internet service up to a certain point, right? In Ukraine, because he doesn't want to be complicit in turning this into World War III or whatever, which is preposterous. And it's like, imagine if, like one of the, Boeing was like, yes, you can use our weapon systems, but only if you don't cross the Donbass. It's
General Dynamics,
like,
make you tanks, but we're going to limit those tanks and their ability to fire because, we don't want we don't want to kill anybody with them.
We don't want blood on our hands. So Elon is part of the new right, like that new like horseshoe coalition. So how it's and Elon doesn't say anything about China, by the way. Never, because he has business there. So, how does that new coalition, if China does actually start menacing Taiwan, hold together, right? If a Democrat is president, as we're seeing in Russia, it works, right? Because everyone can just be like Democrat bad, right? Like Tom Cotton can say, oh, Joe Biden's being too big of a pussy, and Marjorie Taylor Greene can say, oh, Joe Biden shouldn't be giving any weapons to Ukraine at all. We shouldn't give a single cent. And they're kind of in coalition because they're both like Joe Biden's bad, right? So, but what happens if Ron DeSantis is president, right?
Great point.
And China does menace Taiwan, right? And you're going to have the Cottons of the world that are going to want to actually act, and follow up their language. And then you're going to have the MAGA part of the coalition, the Trump, your Elons, your Marjorie Taylor Greene's, that are going to be like, who cares about Taiwan? Right? Like, why would we spend anything there? And they haven't worked that out internally at all. And like the Democrats being in charge are papering over that very, very big internal fissure. I mean, probably the biggest internal fissure within the party, really.
All right. Hey, Democrats have an internal fissure of their own, though. Di-Fi stepping down, but not immediately. I guess this is like the Democrats' Strom Thurmond moment. She is totally out to lunch. Is that okay to say?
She didn't know that she was resigning when they asked her. It was really awkward.
It's very... Sarah, do you have thoughts on this? Aside from the fact that it's sad, because, look, in her prime, Di-Fi was... especially in foreign affairs, like a very serious mind and an important part of the American foreign policy establishment. And, just a razor sharp, aside from the fact that it's a reminder that we are all of us getting old, and that age comes for all of us. So I don't know. What are your thoughts here?
Yeah, I mean, look, I do think that these guys are hanging on too long. We have too many octogenarians in Congress and running for president. And I think that it's when people don't quite know the right time to let go, the problem is that then people are ready to push you, right? They're ready to say, like, get out of here. And then it kind of robs you of the opportunity to just celebrate your legacy. Like if she'd gone out and was stepping down and saying it's time for a new generation, people would be like, let's spend a week talking about the legacy of Dianne Feinstein and all the things she did. And instead, people are like, this senile person held on so long out of ego. And this is, and like, it's a bummer way to go out. But they do it themselves. And this is where I get a little bit on Joe Biden. Is like, 86 is old and he'll be president. And like, there's something arrogant about saying like, no. I'm sorry, guys. Like, it comes for us all. It just does. Usually somewhere between 80 and 90. If you're lucky. So just, yeah.
Pass the torch, old man. You sound like Eric Swalwell.
That's not how I sound.
I've got two.
I know. I'm kidding.
I've got two Di-Fi thoughts. We're talking about Dianne Feinstein of a producer request here for those who aren't familiar with our little slang. Number one on Di-Fi is her career has been unbelievable. It's really hard to appreciate. I mean, she was on the board of supervisors with Harvey Milk. With Harvey Milk,
isn't that amazing?
Okay, that makes her seem really old, but it also is just like it's that feels like out of just another century.
Harvey Milk died young,
literally.
though. It's worth.
Harvey Milk did, die young. But I mean, when I watch the Harvey Milk movie, it doesn't feel contemporary.
Well, Sean Penn was probably a little older than Harvey Milk was.
Yeah, Sean did a good job. Anyway, I'm just saying she was there. She was early with the gays. You got to give her love. She mayor of San Francisco, defended the gays, fighting AIDS way before her time on that front. So I always have a special place in my heart for Dianne Feinstein as a neocon Democrat who is early with the gays. I mean, she hit all my erogenous zones, and if she wanted to run,
globalist too, right?
I would have voted for her in that primary. I'm just letting you know, I would have voted for 97-year-old Dianne Feinstein because that's my woman. Okay, as for her replacements, there actually isn't a fissure in the Democratic Party, and I think this is bad. Fissures, sometimes news people are always like, there's a fissure in the party, and that means things are bad. It's not really, actually. Sometimes fissures are good. There needs to be creative destruction and new ideas that come in place, and we got into a fight with Favreau about this a little bit in LA during the live show, but like the people going to replace her, Katie Porter, Adam Schiff, or, maybe Barbara Lee, like all agree on everything and are not really offering any kind of new vision for what a party could look like. And I don't know, in a state like California that is very dynamic and has a lot going for it, but also has a lot of problems, as evidenced by my Brooke Jenkins interview a couple weeks ago, it'd be nice to have somebody in that race that was like, hey guys, I think that Joe Biden's great. I think the Democrats are great. I think the MAGA people are bad. I don't think we should be racist, but, maybe we should have a little bit of a reform mind on some of this stuff. Ro Khanna is not exactly my brand of Democrat, but at least he's saying, hey, we should try a few new things. I would like to see that in this Senate race, and rather than watching like three people who agree on everything spend $800 million, to just determine who gets to sit in an uncontested seat for 100 years. That's a little bit sad.
Are they the same
about this process?
Are they the same?
Adam Schiff and Katie Porter, what do they disagree about? What do they think the Democrats should do differently?
Maybe it's a question of emphasis. And to be fair, I guess I've paid negligible attention to this and its dynamics.
It's very early.
Yeah, just knowing what I know about both of them, I guess I would say he seems like a pretty typical sort of normie-ish Democrat, right? But a little bit of a showboater, somebody who likes some attention. Whereas I think she's like a populist, right? Like he seems like a corporate Democrat. And she seems like somebody who wants to be like, I'm going to spend all my time attacking corporations, which I find interesting in California because people forget it's so liberal. It has more Republicans than anywhere else in the country. And they're pretty populist and anti-corporate. And I've always been like, I wonder if Katie Porter doesn't have some weird wraparound appeal in a place like California that Schiff, especially, and also, I mean, I do think that Schiff looks like in a party that is trying to jump into the future and have different voices and different faces. Katie, youngish, progressive, populist Katie Porter with her whiteboard seems like slightly more today's speed than the Adam Schiff. But I don't know. They do like their old white guy politicians.
I guess that's true. I guess my point is if this primary is fought over whether Adam Schiff is taking money from pharma corporate PACs or not. It feels a little bit small ball, I guess. As far as
I think that is the fight. Sure. I think that's it.
You're right, though. That is astute.
All right. Before we get out of here, because it's been a long show, the only thing we are allowed to speak about in regards of the Super Bowl is the halftime act with Rihanna, who I guess was a tremendous disgrace to America and the worst halftime act ever or something, right? Why was Trump upset? No, it's what Trump said. And is it just because she's black? Is that why it was? I didn't understand the...
I mean, Trump likes a musical. I think that despite Trump being a masculine man, he's into musicals. If you listen to his playlists, they're very operatic. There's a lot of things that overlap with gay bar playlists. I don't know that he realizes that or that it's intentional. And so I do think that, maybe Trump's style is a little bit more like the Katy Perry. You had the Sharks. You had a lot of like different flamboyant elements. I think that the blackness also is there's maybe something to it. But
I think it was basically about the blackness.
You think it was basically about the blackness? Well, I don't want to get inside Trump's lizard head. I'll tell you this. I thought Rihanna was fantastic. She was a 10 out of 10 for me. I forgot. We listened to Rihanna all week as a prep in our home, and I kind of forgot how many hits she had. Like a couple of times, something because I've never, Beyonce, Gaga. I've always been like my divas. So I never like put on a Rihanna album, and so like occasionally a song would come on, and I'd be like, oh wait, that's her too. Oh yeah. I mean, her catalog was so big that like SOS, she had a couple big ones that she didn't even get to. In the little montage, and doing the pregnancy reveal, I thought was very cool. I'm just hoping she's Coachella next year, so I'll go so I can go back. I thought it was phenomenal.
She'll have just had a baby.
Yeah, but I mean, she can get back out there. She did the Super Bowl pregnant. Why not do Coachella with a newborn? Maybe not. But I thought she was really great. One of my top. I thought last year was great too. They got 2 years in a row.
Last year was Snoop and Eminem and Dre, right? That last year's was my second favorite all time behind the.
It was so great. It was
Prince.
Because it's for us, right? Like we're old now, and we're listening to our old songs get piped back to us by these aging, rappers and like whatever. I'll just say I watched the Super Bowl halftime show with my kids, and we were all dancing, and. It was, I was sort of trying to, because I've had a couple halftime shows where I've been like, ooh, children are watching this, with like the twerking or the outfits. But I thought the staging was really cool. I thought the way that she was, which was like not indifferent, but like at the center, supremely confident. Sometimes these rockers look nervous at the Super Bowl. You can like feel the pressure of the big performance. And she looked like it was all hers, and everyone was surrounding her. The dances were cool. The effect was cool. And she didn't have to do too much. But she was like doing just enough for it to feel fun to watch Rihanna at the center of it. But still, I don't know. I loved it. And the thing is like, I wasn't reading any commentary. I wasn't on Twitter. And so when I saw later that some people were, I walked away from that being like, that was awesome. Like, that was so fun to watch.
No guest. She didn't need a guest. I thought that's baller. To be like, I'm not bringing out any surprise. She's going to be pregnant me.
I generally hate when they bring in guests. Like, the act should be the act. Like, you don't need anybody else. Yeah,
give it to me. I will say I did one as part of my posting. I did one popular post on Twitter, which I know neither of you saw, which I'll share with you right now live, which was like the number of songs that she has that are just like ambient noise at gay clubs. From like the 2000s. So like this was the Gen X. I was a little young. I mean, Snoop and Dre, and that was like middle school for me. But like, so Rihanna's like a little later, right? So it's like right when I'm starting to go to gay clubs. It's like her that soundtrack is just like ambient noise. And I'm watching and I'm starting to have like, little images flash through my head of like bad behavior gone past of the 2010s. And I did a tweet that I was like, I wonder if this is what boomer hippies feel like when like Dark Side of the Moon comes on, when they talk about their acid flashbacks. I was having like gay club strobe light flashbacks just listening to her. So I do think that added to my appreciation for it. The nostalgia.
See, I'm
effect.
the exact opposite,
She's
which
amazing.
is that I'm like 10 years too old, 5 years too old for Rihanna. And so
you knew
while I
nothing.
was watching it, I thought to myself, if I was a Rihanna fan, this would be the greatest show ever because the staging is fantastic. And like she's giving clearly a great performance, but I'm hearing all of this probably not for the first time, but like again, it's been background music here or there for me, and so I don't really know any of it, and so I was able to appreciate it, but without loving it. Yeah.
Well, I found Love in a Hopeless Place is a song. I'm a little older than Tim, but I was also in the bars for Rihanna, and like That is a song
every night.
That is every night. You would not believe how often that song played. And also, it's a song I think about finding love in a club because that is a hopeless place, right? Like it just feels, I don't know. Everything about it's great.
Guys, good show. Long show. It was good to see you guys. Everybody go to thebulwark.com, sign up for Charlie's newsletter, get all the great podcasts, and hit subscribe, hit like, hit all the buttons, leave us 5 stars. See you next week. Bye.
Bye.